Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really fascinating journey back to a pivotal era in American history, a period that, well, fundamentally rewired the nation's economy, laying the groundwork for the modern world we live in now. And what makes this deep dive particularly interesting is the material you've shared frames this era, specifically 1884 to 1914, through a unique astrological lens, Pluto in Gemini. Now, whether you're deep into astrology or just, curious about different ways to view history, what's pretty remarkable is how well this framework seems to illuminate the huge shifts happening then. Our mission today is to pull out the key insights from this material, showing how this telecommunications revolution of its time really did transform everything, from business operations to even how people experience time itself.
Absolutely, and it's a story with really profound implications for understanding how power and even value itself transformed. The research you've got paints a vivid picture. It states, when Pluto entered Gemini in 1884, America's wealth moved from iron and oil to networks of rails, wires, and contracts. That shift, it argues, made the modern corporation possible, and rewired the U.S. economy forever. It's a really compelling case that the actual fabric of American prosperity was fundamentally redefined. Power became about connection.
That is a powerful statement, linking power not to, say, raw materials, but to the ability to connect. So let's unpack this astrological framing just a bit. What exactly do Gemini and Pluto signify here? How do they help us understand this specific period? It's definitely not your typical history approach.
Right, and that's what makes it interesting. It's quite a useful frame because these archetypes seem to align so well with what was actually happening historically. Think of Gemini as like the messenger sign. It's all about communication, connections, networks, contracts, things that move fast, adapt, very mutable, quick, exchange-oriented. Pluto, on the other hand, well, that signifies intense, often transformative power. Death and rebirth, profound change, concentration of influence,
Okay, I see.
So Pluto in Gemini, as the material presents it, suggests that during this era, the really deep reshaping of power and wealth happened through communication, through these vast networks. It wasn't just faster business. It was fundamentally rewriting the rules of influence, making the intangible, in a way, the ultimate currency.
The intangible becoming the currency.
Yeah, and the material also notes that Gemini and its opposite Sagittarius are common signs linked to the masses. So these telecommunications revolutions weren't just for the elite, they affected everyone on a huge scale in industrialized nations, a shift touching almost every aspect of daily life.
That's a great way to put it. I can already see the echoes today. So with this idea of power shifting to networks, I'm really curious how this actually materialized, like on the ground. How fast did this physical infrastructure, the communication lines, actually get built? What were the big steps with something like the telegraph?
Well, the telegraph really was the internet of the 19th century. It connected places that felt worlds apart, collapsed distance in ways people just couldn't have imagined before. And the milestones, they really show how quickly it took hold and just changed everything about information flow. Let's look at the timeline they lay out. 1844. You get the very first U.S. telegraph message, "What hath God wrought?" I mean, that phrase itself shows the awe, right? Instant communication over distance. It felt almost magical.
Yeah, you can imagine.
1851. Just 7 years later, Western Union is founded. And it didn't take long for it to become this huge titan, basically monopolizing the industry. That speed of consolidation tells you how valuable these channels were seen to be.
Right, almost immediately.
1861. Then, the first transcontinental telegraph. Think about the impact. The Pony Express, the symbol of rapid communication back then, instantly obsolete.
Wow, overnight.
Yeah, this single event just highlighted the shift. Physical messages replaced by electronic signals? It's kind of poetic, isn't it? That image of the writer, gone, replaced by a spark down a wire. You can almost feel the ground shifting.
Definitely.
1866. The first successful permanent transatlantic cable, linking continents. Game changer for international business, diplomacy, shrinking the world.
Okay, so global reach now, too.
Exactly. And then, domestically, 1878, Western Union launches its stock ticker service, a specialized telegraph. And by 1896, these stock tickers are standard on Wall Street. Now, this isn't just faster trading. It means, as your material says, prices in New York and London could move in sync minute by minute.
Minute by minute. That's incredible.
Imagine the speed. Market information wasn't days old anymore. It was practically real time. It drove a whole new rhythm for the economy.
That real-time sync is just mind-blowing for that era. So, okay, if the telegraphs were the nervous system carrying the information, then the railroads, I assume, were the physical arteries moving the actual stuff, the goods and people. How do they work together to create this new networked economy, this Pluto in Gemini landscape?
Precisely. The railroads were just as crucial, moving goods and people at speeds never seen before,
Huh.
making the physical network match the informational one. It was absolutely symbiotic. 1869, you get the first transcontinental railroad completed. The Golden Spike, not just transport, but like an act of national unification, stitching East and West together physically.
Great symbolic moment, too, yeah.
Definitely. But then, 1873, interestingly, railroad overbuilding triggers the Long Depression, a really powerful early example of what we'd now call network contagion.
Ah, the downside.
Right. A problem in one part of this new interconnected system, the rail network, could spread rapidly and destabilize the whole economy, nationwide, not just local, showed the risks.
So connectivity cuts both ways.
Exactly. Then 1883, and get this, the railroads literally created standard time zones.
They created them.
Yeah. Before that, every town had its own local time. Imagine coordinating train schedules or even telegrams. They implemented these zones to coordinate dispatching and schedules. It fundamentally reshaped how time was perceived across the whole continent, pulled the country into this synchronized rhythm.
Wow, I never knew that. That's incredible. Reshaping time itself.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And by 1890, the U.S. rail network is over 163,000 miles. Just this dense web enabling commerce. Then, 1900, the sheer economic weight. Railroads represented 2/3 of U.S. corporate securities by value.
2/3.
Yeah, shows you how central they were to the nation's wealth. So together, rails and telegraphs created this system. Goods, information, capital flowing in real time. This infrastructure was truly transformative.
It really does sound like a complete reimagining of logistics, of scale. So what did this mean for, like, the actual structure of businesses? Your material highlights how national corporations became possible in a way they just weren't before. Sounds like a fundamental shift.
Oh, absolutely fundamental. And it makes you ask, well, how did companies operate before this? The research contrasts before 1860 with after 1880. Before this grid, corporations were mostly local, maybe regional. I mean, imagine trying to manage a factory in Ohio from New York when messages took weeks by horse mail or slow canal boats.
Impractical, yeah.
Totally impossible for complex multi-site operations, logistics, information lag. It limited everything. Companies were, necessarily decentralized, maybe loosely connected, couldn't achieve real cohesion over distance.
Right.
But after the rail and telegraph build-out, everything changes. A headquarters in New York could now direct refineries in Ohio, manage trains in California almost instantly. This meant, as the material says, a truly national company could now exist in practice, not just on paper. That's the aha moment, understanding the scale of modern business.
In practice, not just on paper. That's key.
Exactly. This was the birth of the, vertically integrated, centrally managed enterprise we recognize today, coordinating huge supply chains, distribution networks across thousands of miles, a leap from regional outfits to continental empires.
Okay, so these new national companies, what did they actually look like? And the financial structures? What were the key developments during this Pluto and Gemini time that changed how wealth was accumulated and managed? Because it sounds like more than just making local businesses bigger.
Precisely. It wasn't just scaling up. It was creating entirely new kinds of entities. With power flowing through these networks, corporations quickly became what your material calls paper empires. You saw the rise of really complex financial instruments, unprecedented concentrations of wealth, often through intricate legal structures like trusts. 1882, a prime example is the Standard Oil Trust. Your sources say it controlled maybe 90% of U.S. oil.
90%.
Yeah. And it wasn't just one big company. It was this vast system of dozens of firms, all bound by contracts, controlled from a central point, an incredible concentration of power in one networked system. The trust structure itself was an innovation.
A way to control without owning everything directly.
Exactly. Then, 1893, you get the panic, and that showed the downside again. Network contagion spreading nationwide. Instantly, a crisis in railroads ripples through banking, the whole economy collapses nationally, not just locally.
So the system becomes more fragile in some ways, too.
It creates systemic vulnerabilities, yes. And then, 1901, U.S. Steel is founded, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. And it wasn't just size. It was an empire built, as the sources say, on both iron and information, integrating everything from raw materials to distribution, all managed through these networks. A physical and informational behemoth.
Iron and information.
This era saw contracts, trusts, binding firms into massive systems, fundamentally changing how wealth was controlled and organized across the country. A financial and corporate revolution alongside the tech one.
That's a really profound point. Wealth built on both.
Yeah.
Now, there's also that fascinating detail in your material about the U.S.'s own astrological chart. Can you tell us more about U.S. Pluto in the second house and how that ties into this economic transformation? It adds another layer, like a sort of national financial DNA.
Right. It's an interesting layer from the sources. According to their astrological framework, the U.S. was born with Pluto in its second house.
Hmm.
And in astrology, the second house relates to a nation's values, its resources, its wealth, its economic foundation, you could say, maybe even its economic destiny or karma.
Okay.
So in earlier periods, like when Pluto was in Taurus, the material suggests this meant consolidating tangible things, land, minerals, physical assets, very material wealth. Think manifest destiny, expansion, raw industrial might.
Right, physical stuff.
Exactly. But with Pluto and Gemini, the sources argue this focus on wealth fundamentally shifted. It moved from tangible matter, like land, into contracts, networks, communication systems. The nation's economic strength became increasingly tied to its ability to connect, to communicate, to create these vast, often invisible systems of exchange.
Invisible systems.
Yeah. This, they argue, rewired the American money code from tangible matter to paper and signal, a really profound shift in what was considered valuable and how it was exchanged.
Wow. Rewired the American money code. That's evocative.
It highlights this pivot point where intangible assets information flow, the power of connection, became the new currency of prosperity, not just for companies, but for the nation itself. Like the country's economic operating system got a massive upgrade.
That concept really resonates. And, it all sounds incredibly familiar. Are there parallels to our own time, especially with the internet? The feeling of rapid, interconnected change seems so similar.
Oh, the parallels are striking, almost like a historical echo, and the material points them out explicitly. It states that the railroad and telegraph grid of the 19th century worked just like the internet backbone of the 1990s.
Just like it, huh?
In both eras, these networks fused fragmented markets into one. They enabled new companies to scale basically overnight at speeds never seen before, and both fueled massive speculative bubbles as everyone rushed in. Think of the railroad boom and the Long Depression. Then compare that to the dot-com boom and bust. Very similar dynamics.
Yeah, that tracks. The euphoria, then the crash.
And there's that other astrological parallel the sources mention. During the dot-com boom, roughly 1995 to 2008, Pluto was in Sagittarius.
The opposite sign to Gemini.
Exactly, opposite Gemini. And once again, networks of information digital this time. Not wires, reshaped commerce, speculation ran wild, fortunes rose and fell at internet speed. These common signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, linked to information, travel, the masses, they seem to consistently mark eras where telecommunications profoundly affect huge populations and spark these massive shifts in connection, transactions, and our very idea of value. It's a powerful pattern recognition the sources highlight.
That is fascinating. So by 1914, the material concludes Pluto's Gemini work was done. America's economy wasn't local and tangible anymore. It was national, financial, wired. And then, a century later, we see that same archetype return with the internet under Pluto and Sagittarius, creating a whole new wave of change. It's almost like a cosmic blueprint for economic transformation playing out.
It really feels like that, reading this material. The big picture seems clear. Every Pluto cycle, especially in these common mutable signs like Gemini and Sagittarius, profoundly transforms how wealth is connected, how power is concentrated, even how we fundamentally imagine value. It forces this complete reassessment of what economic might actually is, and it really makes you wonder, how is our current era of interconnectedness with AI, blockchain, global digital markets reshaping the nature of value and power right now? What new paper empires, maybe digital empires, are forming? How is the money code being rewired again in this moment based on what we value in the digital age? It's a powerful lens for our own time.
It certainly does make you think. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a shortcut to understanding this pivotal era and maybe, a new lens to view our own rapidly changing, interconnected world. Thanks for joining us.